Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am so incredibly excited you're joining us because today we are looking at a brilliant, true to life fable about a very smart, feathered friend who finds himself in a desperate, literally life or death situation. We're going to learn exactly how this resourceful little bird used his brain as his ultimate superpower. So get ready because the lesson we're learning today is going to help you every single time you face a tough challenge. Okay, let's dive right into this. I want you to think just for a second about a time when you got totally, completely stuck. Maybe it was a really hard homework assignment, a super complicated puzzle, or, trying to learn to ride a two-wheeler. What do you actually do when a problem right in front of you seems completely impossible to solve? Do you give up? Do you just walk away? Well, our feathered friend, the crow, found himself in a situation where giving up was simply not an option. So let's start with phase one, identifying the problem. Every single great solution starts by figuring out exactly what's going wrong, right? I mean, you can't fix something until you really take a good look at the challenge standing in your way. And our source material paints a very scary picture here. A crow became very, very thirsty while searching for water. Actually, it was worse than that. He was going to die for want of water. It was a completely desperate situation. But then, at long last, he spots a pitcher. He immediately flew over to it with absolute delight. You can just imagine his excitement. But then his heart sank. The water inside the pitcher was incredibly low. It was so low that no matter how hard he stretched, the crow just could not drink it. He had finally found water, but he couldn't reach it. That is a massive problem. Which brings us to phase two, trial and error. Now that the crow knows exactly what the problem is, it's time to try and solve it. And I really want you to remember that the very first try usually doesn't work for anyone. Not for scientists, not for inventors, and definitely not for our thirsty bird. So here's how the crow tackled the challenge at first. He started with brute strength. Plan A was to just break the pitcher. He tried his absolute hardest to smash it so the water would spill out, but he couldn't break it. So he quickly switched strategies to Plan B, overturn the pitcher. He tried to tip it over, but the pitcher was simply way too heavy, and the water stayed right at the bottom. Both of his initial plans completely failed. There's a quote directly from the story that goes, "He tried again and again, but he failed." And I really want to highlight this for you because failure is a totally normal part of the problem-solving process. He didn't just try once and fly away crying. He put in the effort. But, sometimes working harder just isn't enough. You actually have to work smarter. He needed to step back and find a brand new strategy. Moving right along to phase three, observation and ideation. Now, what's really interesting about this is that this is the exact moment where most people, and definitely most birds, would just throw in the towel and give up completely. But not the crow. Instead of flying away in defeat, he stopped, he looked at his surroundings, and he used his imagination. These are the precise mental steps our clever crow took to come up with his ingenious new plan. Step one, he stopped getting frustrated and simply looked around at his environment. Step two, he noticed some small pebbles lying nearby on the ground. And step three, he formed a new plan. He realized those rocks weren't just rocks, they were tools. Pebbles. This was the crow's massive aha moment. He saw that these tiny, everyday stones could actually save his life. I mean, it takes a really smart thinker to look at a pile of ordinary rocks and see a life-saving tool, right? But having a great idea in your head is really only half the battle. That leads us right into phase four, taking action. And this brilliantly illustrates that you have to actually do the work. Execution is where the magic happens. This phase requires an incredible amount of patience and just a lot of hard work to bring a smart idea to life. Think about the timeline of this sequence unfolding. At the start, the very first pebble is dropped in, plop, and not much changes. Then in the middle, he's just dropping them in one by one by one. It is a really slow process. But finally, at the end of all that effort, all those tiny pebbles displace the water, and the water reaches the very neck of the pitcher. Let's really detail this continuous effort because it was not easy. The crow picked up the pebbles one by one in his beak. He dropped them into the pitcher. And the most absolutely crucial point here, he kept going. He didn't stop after 3 or 4 stones when the water didn't magically rise right away. He trusted his plan, and he kept working until the water finally rose all the way up to the top. And because of his amazing effort, our story tells us he drank water to his heart's content and flew away completely saved. He survived. The crow's hard work gave us a very happy resolution. And finally, phase 5, the golden lesson. Now we're going to transition from his incredible survival story to the core takeaway that every single one of us can learn from this clever bird. What was the secret ingredient the crow used? It was his will. Let's define what having will actually looks like in action. Will is the determination to keep trying, thinking, and doing until you solve a problem. The crow tried his first ideas. He thought up a new one when those failed. And he did the really hard work of dropping the pebbles in, one by one. That is true willpower. So, the crucial point is captured beautifully by the classic moral of the story. Where there is a will, there is a way. This is our empowering, super memorable mantra for the day. If you have the determination, the will, to overcome an obstacle, your brain is going to help you find the way to do it, no matter how totally impossible it might seem at first. Which leaves me with one final, big question for all of you young learners. What problem will you solve today? The next time you feel stuck, whether it's on a really hard math equation, building a complex toy, or just fixing a mistake, I want you to remember our friend, the thirsty crow. Stop, look around, think of a new plan, and use your will to find your way. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking great questions, and I'll see you next time.